They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the state, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are more than just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of own nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
So we, eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful friends. Today I feel so lucky to get to chat with a creative genius with the skills of framing perspective combined with the excellent artistic execution, profoundly effective timing and composition, and the deepest of insights presented with the skill of the comedian, thereby helping us to swallow some otherwise bitter pills with just the right amount of honey. The man who immortalizes political gaffes, comments on our culture and society with color and shape, and proliferates wisdom along the way. George Alexopolous is here with us on Rogue Ways. George, it's such an honor to be able to speak to you, and thank you so much for being here on Rogue Ways.
Thanks. I am super not worthy of any of that. Let me know when that guy shows up. It's not me. But thanks, though. That's very, very kind of you.
You're welcome. Well, that's what I see, and I think a lot of people see of it, so maybe you just need to catch up with the rest of us.
Wow. Yeah, I'm very slow that way.
Well, I want to also remind people listening out there that if you need a boost or a reconnection to some higher spiritual energies and messages, to check out rogueways.org to find your medicine, whether it be through writings, signed copies of my novels, orgonite earrings, pendants and plaques, tarot readings, or guidance sessions. I can't wait to connect further with people. And also, if you want to be part of our irreverent, questioning, thoughtful, and spiritually minded community, then come chill with us at rogue.locals.com. And otherwise, George, we always start the show with the tradition of the pointless question of the episode. And so I wanted to ask you, which came first, the artist or the art? It's not a very pointless question, I'm sorry.
Would that be for me individually or in general human history?
You could take it both ways or either one. Which one would you want to answer?
Oh, that's deep. I think human history is more interesting. Yeah, gosh. I would imagine that once humans are comfortable enough, they have their food, they have their shelter, clothing, and whatever other needs they have, boredom kicks in and they start to think, like, how can I now start to express myself? Yeah. But then sometimes art also comes out during times of intense pressure. So it is a chicken or the egg kind of thing. I guess people make art sometimes both to kill time and as a pressure release, as a sort of biological need. I really don't know how to answer that, but I'm fascinated by both answers, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly. I was going to just ask you what came first, the chicken or the egg, and I was like, ooh, it's like the artistic version of it, though. Because it seems like to me a lot of artists, you're expressing something that is sort of like inexpressible in other ways besides what we call art. And so there's something there, right? There's something that, like, whatever that is coming from, that's already there. And at the same time, we wouldn't know it or be able to understand it or experience it unless it was expressed. So which one,
Yeah, it's kind of a weird mystery because on one hand you have the, not the silly, well, if I say people have dreams, daydreams, nighttime dreams, whatever, we just have these thoughts floating around in our head and they're just these ethereal, non-existent, they don't have any physical forms. So art is a way of putting our thoughts down and maybe even communicating them with others. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a communication. Like, let's say I have a dream about something that I just want to remember what it looked like, or I saw a cool building in my dream and I want to paint it or sculpt it or anything like that. It's just so I can make it real and remember it, that sort of thing. Or if I want to tell other people what it was. So I guess maybe that's one form of what art is. I mean, if you think of the oldest art, the cave paintings of animals and that sort of thing, why did they make those? They didn't have to, but for some reason they told a story. Hey, we went hunting this one time and we caught these gazelles and we saw these weird animals. And throughout all of human history, I guess there's this need something having to do with communication, I suppose, preservation of the experience of, hey, I lived here, I lived during these times, and I just want to create this record of what I thought and felt, and I just want to share it with other people of my generation and maybe future generations, that sort of thing.
I love it, because if we didn't have people who had that urge, then we would be missing out on, I don't even know. I don't know how to judge the proportion of human experience that we would miss out on if we didn't have art, but it seems pretty immense to me. It's like a, I don't know. I feel like our society is really bad at honoring the artists, especially for all that they do for like the collective psyche, you know? And I feel like that, like what you're describing, the original, what we see as the original sort of art was like the very beginnings of that. I almost wonder if the person, like the people painting it on the cave were like, no, seriously, dude, like this antelope was crazy. Like, check this out. You know, like you're saying, like telling the story. But if there's also something like deeply reverent in there, like, you know, like this is our life. This is our sustenance.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of art that has survived the generations, let's say, thousands of years. It could be something as simple as an artist trying to say, I find this thing beautiful, so please preserve it.
Yeah.
And people do preserve it because they also find it good and valuable and worth passing on for whatever reason. It could be a building, it could be a statue, painting. Literature is a relatively recent invention. I mean, ever since the printing press, that's when, you know, literature didn't really blow up until the past 200 years, I would argue. But yeah, just all art and human endeavors. I mean, in the classical sense of art, I suppose, I'm trying not to trip over myself too much. I'm sorry. Nowadays, we have a sort of the meaning of the piece of art is almost overridden by the viewer. I think that's a relatively modern invention. I think in the older days, it's more like this piece is trying to tell a story. What is the artist trying to tell us? And there's sort of back and forth. Or maybe we try to overwrite it with what's the author's intent. But nowadays, it's more like, what do we think this means to us? And it sort of doesn't matter what the original creator intended.
That's a really good point.
That's kind of a scary recent phenomenon, I think. Recent in the sense of like the past century or something. But yeah, we could talk about that. I don't want to get too in our own heads on this sort of thing, but yeah.
Well, it's really interesting because I was just listening to a completely different person. I don't even know if you are into things like the Tartaria or like ancient history being sort of a lie, that we're like disconnected from the truth of it, or those possibilities. But one of the people who talks about that a lot, Howdy Mikowski, and he's going to be on Rogueway soon, which will also be fun. But he was saying, you know, I wonder if the people of the past, when they were producing art, like you're saying, like they have an intention, they have something that they're trying to express or something they're trying to accomplish. And this piece of art is meant to evoke a specific response, and that the sort of success of the art is almost whether or not it can evoke that from consistently, like through every single person who interacts with it. And I was like, that's a really different conception than we have. Because like you said, we're very, it's almost like selfish, self-centered about it. We're like, well, I feel like this about this art, and that's all that matters. The end. Like, you know.
It's hard too, because a lot of older art, even say the times of Veneer, even a lot of art was commissioned by really, really rich establishments or families. Most artists would be told, oh, draw my family, paint my family, or paint this story from mythology or the Bible, or make this sculpture, or make this building, that sort of thing. So it was sort of, the artist was at the mercy of their patrons. I think at least the stuff that's been preserved and not in private galleries. Because I would imagine if I was a painter, there's a lot of paintings that no one is ever going to see because I was just practicing.
True.
But recent, I think, I don't know, maybe the past 200-ish years also, around the time the photograph was invented, I would think that once photographs became good enough, the need for painting sort of fell into the background, I would think, and became more about expression and art as we know it now, I would think. Whereas back then, painting was one of the only ways you could preserve an image in visual form.
Yeah.
So it was a strange discipline back then. I would think it's more about, back then it was the photograph. That's all they had.
It was like a form of documentation more than just pure expression. Like,
Yeah, I mean, if you look in Europe and there's paintings all over the churches and stuff, priests would hire Renaissance artists. So draw this Bible story on the wall or something like that. And really, the artist was just at the mercy of whoever was paying them, whether the church or the royal families or something like that. Nowadays, obviously, you can crowdfund stuff, but it's in their own way. I mean, an artist can only earn a living by having patrons. So whatever the patrons want to pay for, that's what the artist is going to have to make, I guess.
Yeah, that's like the sad it's a weird dichotomy, right? Because in the modern world you're kind of allowed to create whatever art you want. I mean, you can literally like take fecal matter and like put it on a plate and be like, this is art, and that will be art. And then but you can also so you have all that more freedom, I guess, and more tools, maybe even like technology helps in various ways open up fields of art, but then like you're saying, you're still beholden to the patron in a way, because you still have to sell to survive. And how do you balance that? Like, how do you feel about that line that you have to walk?
Oh, me personally, it's more a question of every artist has to be able to answer, how am I going to earn a living? There are some who maybe they inherited a bunch of money, so they don't have to worry about who's going to pay for my art. I'm just going to make my art. Some people get really lucky. They can crowdfund something at the right time that just people want to throw money at. That happens. There's every artist has to figure out their own way to earn their living, I suppose. For someone like me, it's a mixture of, selling a bunch of books, Patreon, that sort of thing. A little bit of savings. I had a few good jobs where I was able to save up a few bucks, but every year is different. I'm a freelancer, but can have artists who have the equivalent of patrons where they're working for something like that. Yeah. So they're not really making art to express themselves. Let's say I work for Pixar. Yeah. I'm not doing those things to express myself. I'm just being handed animate this or model this. And it's for the good of the project, but that project is not me.
Right.
Someone like myself, I mean, I've only been doing this for a little while, so I can't really say with expertise, but I don't think someone like myself, I can't think of many examples where this is common, what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You get guys I grew up reading like Penny Arcade, if you're familiar.
Somewhat.
PvP. I mean, there was webcomics when I was in high school, and my friends wanted to do webcomics for a living. And we would look at these successful webcomics and we're like, oh, how are they able to make livings? Oh, they sell ads on their website. This or that artist has a Patreon and they do really good. And we could never figure out how to monetize it or do it full time. Yeah. So the biggest challenge for an artist or freelancer is finding the time to do what makes them happy and what makes their audience happy. And by some miracle, I found some way to be able to sort of do that. But I'm still trying to figure out a good rhythm.
Yeah. Well, you hit a nerve, and this whole time you're talking, your art is being, flashed over the screen, so people who are listening to you are able to see your work. And so by now, if they're paying attention to that, they're like pretty familiar with your style, at least what I could grab from Twitter. You have this sort of Uber thread of all of your sort of webcomics, I guess. And part of, I think, and I don't know, because I'm not sure when you got sort of bigger or started getting attention for this or how that sort of came about, and I would love to hear about that. But I think part of why you sort of struck this chord is because you were filling a niche that no one was filling. And my boyfriend's also an artist, and, he talks about, that he should have sort of, or wishes that he could have rather been like a bit more political and a bit more social commentary with his art, but he already had like somewhat of a base and he would have alienated half of them. And I don't know if you got your base by being sort of political and social commentary, or if you did end up alienating people. So maybe you want to tell us a little bit more about that.
That's also a chicken or the egg kind of problem.
Yeah.
I don't actually consider, this would sound hypocritical if I said it in the wrong context, but I don't think I'm a political person necessarily.
Totally.
I think it's more like I see these people grandstanding and they have the world at their fingertips. They control so much and they're so full of themselves, and they say things that just don't make sense, or the world doesn't make sense, or maybe a comic strip idea jumps into my head because I'm really scared about something. And I draw a strip that I try to think of it like, how can I make this situation absurd? Like almost a Monty Python sketch.
Yeah.
Like yesterday, I drew a strip about a lady wearing a mask in a subway, and she was next to a person wearing like a spacesuit with the bubble helmet. And then someone says, "Oh, hey, look at this weirdo." And then she turns, and everyone on the train is wearing the spacesuit with the bubble helmet, and it turns out she's the weirdo.
Yes.
So that's just something that these are not necessarily political, but oddly, uh, people think, I don't know, like I lean conservative, I guess, but
You seem like an
maybe
equal
I'm not sure.
opportunity commenter, honestly. I mean, like,
I want,
yeah.
yeah, sorry, I want to be one,
Mhm.
but the past couple of years, there's just been so much criticism going in one direction.
Yeah.
And as somebody who considers themselves moderate, I've been told I'm not, but I don't listen to what those people say.
Right.
I would criticize certain sectors of the political sphere, but nobody is criticizing the other side. And I said, it just makes sense for somebody to do it. So I'm the type of person who likes to cheer for what I perceive as the underdog.
Yes.
So I don't mind putting a little balance out there. I would and have criticized the right, let's say. Like if I was active during the Bush years, for instance, I would have had a lot to criticize. But these past few years have been very, I mean, I've only been doing this for a couple of years. So I guess people have only seen my recent stuff and they think I only attack one direction. But I think if I keep doing this a few more years, if things change politically, who knows? The people I might make comics about might change over time. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I try to think of it like a South Park sort of thing or Monty Python. I find silly people and silly situations and I try to laugh at it, because if I don't, maybe I'll just cry about it, you know?
Yes.
or just be terrified out of my mind. So I try to make a silly situation out of something scary to try to lessen the pressure on myself, and other people seem to agree. And that's pretty much seems to have been what's been going on the past year.
And I think that's exactly what's so beautiful about it is I think there are a lot of people who are like, well, media is not really addressing what I see or what I feel or what I wonder, at least, and maybe I don't even talk about it that much because it's not out there very much, you know, and I'm feeling like sort of wondering, you know, am I alone in this or am I crazy or whatever? And then they see your comics and we're like, oh, thank God we're not the only ones. And also, like you're saying, you're putting it in this, you're pulling out the absurdity of it all, you know? And so then we get to laugh at it. And it's like, it is actually terrifying and it is actually horrible. But when we can laugh at it, it's so helpful to be able to feel not alone and feel not insane and also have that little comic release, you know?
Yeah. Even if I am alone and crazy, at least I want to be able to laugh. So like a lot of ideas might come when I wake up in the morning, I read the news, I'm horrified by what I read. And then I go take a shower. And as I'm sitting in the shower, you know, I'm bored. Everybody's bored in the shower.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh, how can this become a silly situation so I can go about my day and not feel miserable? And then I'll think of something funny like Joe Biden eating a kid or something.
I love that one.
It's stupid. It's really stupid. And then I laugh at it because, you know, it's dumb. And unfortunately, I think what happens is there are people who are like, oh, you shouldn't laugh at this or that. It's too serious to laugh at, or you're politically biased, you shouldn't laugh at this or that. And it's almost like they want to be mad and stay mad. And if you laugh at something that they hold sacred or something that they think shouldn't be laughed at, or something that takes away political power from them, like if they want to make something really serious and then I point out how silly it is, they're like, no, don't laugh at that. You're not allowed to laugh at that. And I think people who take themselves too seriously, myself included, are opening themselves up to a sort of, it's just not a healthy position to be in. I try to be flexible. Yeah. I try to laugh at myself if I can. You know, somebody could call me a name and I'll be like, you're probably right.
Yeah.
You know, it's fine. Like, I don't want to be so high strung that someone can just whack me across the face with something and it ruins my life for the next week or something. Just, it's fine. We can just have a chuckle. It's fine.
Well, it's way
I wish that was the case.
It's way healthier, you know? Like it's you have a balance there,
Yeah.
like an ability to alter your perspective more easily, and it's like you're saying, it's not as rigid, and like you're saying, if someone comes and hits something rigid, like it's gonna shatter. But if you come and hit something flexible, it's just gonna like bend out of the way and come back up.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the ideal. Especially this past year, a lot of us have learned where our breaking points are personally.
True.
And I mean, comics have always been a pressure release valve. Unfortunately, political comics have to be, they're a little sharper than I would like. But I also noticed that there's people who are craving catharsis
Yes.
who,
Well said.
I don't know, it's almost like a need to laugh, because otherwise they're going to be just depressed, and I don't know. But I see this need. It's a need that I have too. And it's like, I wish I could read a comic about this, and I don't know if anyone else is making them. So I'm like, oh, I can draw. I may as well do it myself.
That's exactly the best impetus, I think, for creating art. You're like, I see this thing that I wish existed and it doesn't, so I'm going to create it.
Yeah. I mean, my career was sort of, I was drawing just normal comic books before this, and I had enough free time during the day that I could just make a strip once in a while. They kept getting more popular, and I said, wait, why don't I just do this full time instead?
Yeah.
So I'm still working towards that, but that seems to be what people want right now. And I guess I'm happy to serve. I just hope people don't get so mad at me that, occasionally you'll get a threat or something, but I don't think there's much. It's just people that are mad.
I think in that in itself is a form of service as well, because those people are going to continue to spew whatever they're spewing, until some of it like flies back in their face, and they're like, oh yeah, it's like that Family Guy where the guy is like stabs himself and is like, oh my God, is that what I've been doing to people all this time? Like, I think you have to sort of like have a reflection that, spits it back in your face so that you can see like, oh wow, maybe I don't want to be this person anymore, So I don't think it's a bad thing to sort of like trigger quote unquote people into whatever delusions or whatever anger or whatever issues they're having.
No, it's good to have verbal wrestling, I guess, as opposed to physical wrestling or actual, physical encounters. If people want to yell and call me names, if that's their form of catharsis, I guess that's okay too.
Yeah, it's a beautiful service to provide, honestly. And it's not like I think anybody should be like seeking to take shit from people, but just like if that's what's happening because of your, natural sort of inclinations and the way you're being true to yourself, like, well, that's their problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's the stuff that they just want to call me a jerk or something. I don't mind that. But if they try to spread lies, that's where things get a little murky. But for the most part, I think over time, a person grows a thicker skin, I think. So insults that used to, knock me out for a few days, nowadays I just ignore them.
And is that...
And you really... Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. You can't really pay attention to the stuff that doesn't... Like, I ask myself, if I ignore this, will anything happen? Probably not. Most people just want to call you names and move on. Most of the time, that's all it is. They're just mad. They want to say something. You'll never see them again.
True.
If someone doesn't like a comic from me, they'll just not read it and move on with their day. Sometimes people will say to others privately, hey, you shouldn't follow this guy, to like a famous person because he's a X, Y, and Z. And none of it's true.
Yeah.
But they're trying to attack my reputation and tell other people not to follow my stuff. So it's like, any adult can decide, I don't want to read this.
Yeah.
But when they start deciding that for other people, I would say there's a line there.
Yeah, it seems pretty weird, too, that person would feel the need to control other people's. And it's always been weird to me when someone does something like that. Oh, you don't want to interact with that person. They're I don't know. What's the worst they could even call you? Like maybe a Republican.
Whatever's the mean thing of the day.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And you're not, right? But then they're saying that. And then, and also if that person they're saying that to chooses to not follow you based on that, then good riddance. Honestly, that's very childish.
Yeah, we live in just weird times where you'll hear a rumor. This is all human history, though.
Yeah.
You'll hear a rumor and don't even bother investigating it. Just believe it and move on.
I heard he eats babies. That's why he drew that comic of Joe Biden eating one.
Yeah. Well, I do eat babies, but that's.
But besides that, I mean.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm not a monster, for goodness sake. Yeah, it's, there are, and these are the same people who will look at my comic and say he actually thinks Joe Biden eats babies, for example.
Because some people do, and I'm not opposed to the possibility that it's possible, but that's not what you're actually saying.
Sure. No, I'm just pointing out that it's very South Parkish as far as I'm concerned. It's
Yes.
just a dumb thing to laugh at.
And I liked that, for me at least, I'm a poet, so I always have to go here, but like for me it was like the symbol of him, people like hand their babies to him and he's going to use them however he sees fit. Like, oh, take this picture, I'm holding a baby. Like, this is just a tool to me, a political tool to me. And it's the same sort of energy, like, oh yeah, I'll take that and just eat it. Like, this is mine now.
And there's also the historical, what's the word I'm looking for? Precedent of old religions, like cults even, where they sacrifice children, that sort of thing. What they're really doing is sacrificing their future so that they'll have a better present.
True.
That's one of the ways to interpret that anyway.
Yeah.
So some people might, I think maybe it's possible they know that that's what I'm trying to say, sort of.
Yeah.
And they don't want that message to be spread around. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
It's threatening.
Well, that's the problem with comics and all art, like we mentioned before, is that it can be interpreted and reinterpreted any number of ways. And if they decide that this creator is dangerous for whatever reason, we have to try to slander him, try to stop him any way we can, because who knows what kind of damage he'll do to our ideology, whatever that ideology is.
You'll infect the minds of so many people. Stop him. Do you?
Yeah, only we get to do that.
Do you experience a lot of censorship or people trying to, keep you from being seen in ways other than sort of just like spreading little lies here and there and trying to get someone not to look at you? Like, have you had Twitter
sometimes
ban
on
you?
Twitter, yeah, Twitter sometimes will, or what happens, I think, is people will report comics that have a little bit of, I don't know, some
Edge.
butt showing or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of violence here and there, something like that. They'll report it, and then Twitter will sort of baby censor it a little bit. Extra click. Hey, do you really want to look at this? It's probably had sensitive context. So far I haven't been like hit with anything really hard. The last time I was really laid out was on Reddit about 2 years ago, and Reddit decided that I was a political outsider, let's say.
Yeah.
And so they brigaded me really hard. Nobody knew who I was on the internet at the time, and they ran me off the site completely.
Wow.
And so that was bad. I thought my career was over. I moved to Twitter. I kind of scrambled for the next year or so, and then I found my footing again, so I'm okay. But the Reddit thing was real bad. They decided I was, I'm not even going to say it. They decided I was a political, bad person. Let's go get him. So they pretty much did everything they could to shut me down. But being an artist, you have to do what you have to do. So
it's just crazy to me that would happen to you, because there's people like, I don't know if you're familiar with Marina Abramovic, but she's an artist supposedly, and like she uses fecal matter and blood and semen mixed together to paint on walls, and she does all this like satanic stuff and whatever, and that's her thing. She should do whatever she wants. She's not censored as far as I know in any sphere, and if you tried to censor her, people would argue this is art, you should let it go. But you can be censored for some reason. And I'm like weighing, like, if one of these is actually dangerous, like which one would it be? I don't think anyone should be censored, but it's very interesting.
What I've found throughout the years, even you can see like through the satanic panic of the 90s, when parents were like, oh, don't let your kids play Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. It has magic in it. So what happens, I think, is that groups of people will try to band together and say this ideologically is dangerous for our children. They'll always use it for the children. It's not safe for the children.
Yeah.
Right. So they'll say ideologically this person needs to be put in a box, because if their words and thoughts and memes in the scientific sense are allowed to spread, that will influence culture in a way that will take power away from us. So this person has to be shut down through some means, whether it be blackmail or we found something they posted 9 years ago that's, it's now considered, not even a strike. You get an out, automatic out. So they'll try to shut people down through whatever means. If I made art just using poop and stuff, that's not ideologically dangerous to them.
Right.
It doesn't take power away from them.
That's a good point.
But Yeah, but making fun of extreme thinking and dangerous thinking, I would argue, takes power away from the people who want to propagate that type of thinking. So I would be considered dangerous to them in the same way that I consider them to be dangerous to what I would like to just be a mild, let's live and leave each other alone kind of world, but they
Right.
don't want.
No, they
So I
don't.
guess we're just opposed, and there's nothing we can do. We're not going to fight. There's not going to be a knife fight in the street, as far as I know.
Wouldn't it be so nice though if it could be that simple? Like someone is saying, if we're gonna have wars, then it should be the leader of this country goes to battle, the leader of that country, no weapons, whoever wins wins. The
Oh,
end. And I'm like, that's kind of a beautiful thought, but at the same time, it would be like idiocracy, and we'd vote for like the buffest guy instead of the most like capable. Not that we vote for capable people, but just ideally, it would also go
yeah.
wrong.
All of human history is just mistake after mistake, and somehow humanity finds a way to keep going.
I don't get how. I'm really very perplexed about how we're still going. Like it's very confusing.
I hope after I pass, I'll be able to look at the human story in like a movie form and see how did we exactly get here. That'd be fascinating.
That would be so cool.
But I think I'm horrified to say I think humans are far more resilient than our generation and our culture allows for.
Good point.
COVID was bad, but humans lived through the plague.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, as depressed as we are, we could handle way, way worse. I hope we don't have to. But somehow I think this is barely a struggle right now. We're seeing a few fist fights in the street. It's not open war, so
Yeah.
we should count our blessings, I guess. But I'm still also tired and horrified.
Yeah.
So I would like for things to go back to where they were, maybe.
That'd be cool.
Oh, I don't even know. When was life normal and ever?
I
don't
know. But
So,
we had some semblance of like
yeah.
at least a little bit more freedom and
Just leaving each other alone.
yeah.
I'd be happy with that.
That's why I was watching this thing today, and it was like this woman on a train, and she's like, "You're not wearing your mask," to one of the other guys on the train, and he's like, "I'm drinking. I'm in the eating cart or car or whatever," and I'm like, "Whatever." And this other woman's like, "Hey, like, leave him alone. Like, go sit. Sitting in your seat is social distancing. You'll be fine. Like, go sit down." And she's like, "You're not even a part of this," and I'm like, "Neither of you are part of this. The guy wants to eat. Like, both of you
Yeah.
go away." It's so weird that we
that
think we get a say in someone's whatever they're doing.
that all stems from fear, panic.
Yeah.
People who just can't keep their cool. We're seeing more and more of that, but that part of that is the cabin fever, I think, of whatever we're going through.
True. Yeah, that's going to result in so much. And ego, though, because she's like, I have 70,000 Twitter followers. And it's like, is this a threat? Or like, what?
Yeah, everyone's going to know. Well, really, that's an appeal to, it's like, what's the rock, paper, scissors? And it's like, I win no matter what.
Yeah.
So, hey, I'm going to tell everyone's going to know you're a jerk if you don't do what I say. So that's just one more way they're trying to win the argument. It doesn't work.
It's just bullying. It's just mass bullying.
Yeah. I mean, that works on some people, but my response is go ahead, make me famous.
Yeah,
Like,
true. No press is bad press, right?
Some press is bad press, I guess. But I mean, honestly, I hate to say the Trump thing, and it's really the Streisand effect, I should say. I'm not going to mention the T word.
Yeah.
The more you talk about something, the more people are talking about it, and the more people are aware of it. It's just free advertising.
It's really true.
Yeah. If someone really wants to de-escalate, honestly, the best thing you can do most of the time is not even acknowledge it.
It's a very good point. And as an educator in teaching, we call that managerial method. It's not silencing. Shoot, I forgot. I haven't taught in a few years. I can't remember, but it's the same thing. You're like, you just ignore behaviors and they go away. If it's from most kids just want attention, right? And it's the same with most humans. They're like, I'm doing this because I want a response from you. And so if you ignore it, it goes away.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of little folks in my life, and if they misbehave, sometimes it's really they want attention, and you teach them that if they misbehave and you give them attention, you're teaching them that works,
Bingo.
and they'll keep doing it, and they'll keep doing it worse.
Well, you are a good big person for them to have in their lives then, because most people don't know that.
I'm Greek. I have a big family. We have a lot of little people in my family, so I've seen a lot of them raised, some of them raised better than others. But they always know with me, you can't misbehave to get something from me. In fact, I will make it worse for you if you do.
You're like,
Not in a bad way,
yeah,
but like, yeah, you're not going to get anything from me that
that's
way.
the best. It's the best lesson to learn as early as possible, because then you start realizing like there's no reason for me to behave in this way at all. In fact, if I want what I want, then I'm gonna have to do it in a way that is much more productive and like
Yeah,
beneficial for everybody and rational.
you have you have to reason. You have to basically do things that will make you a good adult. I mean, that's the point of raising kids anyway. Is
Hopefully.
right. You want to try to teach them how they can be productive adults. So like a lot of adults nowadays kick and scream and break things, and they think that that's going to get the results that they want, but actually it just makes people mad at you and it makes them want you to go away.
Yeah.
It's not going to get what you're actually looking for. Um, that's a very pregnant topic also, but I think it's maybe a result of them being taught that kicking and screaming works in the house, but actually in society it just makes people angry at you,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it makes people want to not be around you.
and in society we teach it too. I mean, in our as a teacher in our school system, most teachers are not practicing extinguishing, that's what it's called, like I am, or positive behavior reinforcement is also something like hundreds of times more effective than negative behavior reinforcement. So if you're praising all the good
Mm-hmm.
things that the kid does and you're not reacting or giving them attention when they're misbehaving, whatever, no teachers are practicing that. Very, very few. I would say, like, I don't know, maybe 5 out of 100. And so all these kids are being raised by whatever their parents are doing, and these teachers are reinforcing all these bad habits, not meaning to. They just don't. People don't know.
Yeah, there's I used to be a private art teacher actually, and I would see with a lot of kids that there are some who respond to negative reinforcement, but it's always preferable to praise them, praise the good things, so that they do more of that
Yeah.
rather than admonish the bad things, because that sticks in their head like a splinter, and they get obsessed with it. And it happens to adults too. I've noticed. I mean, look, you've got things like military training where they'll yell at you and be like, "Hey, you're dumb and you're weak. Drop and give me 20." Whatever the point of that is for adults, I guess it's just to sort of drill into your head that you're not in control and these guys are going to yell at you, and it's supposed to make people tough, I guess. But out in normal everyday life and citizen life, I think it's better to encourage positive behaviors and to discourage, like, let's say, for instance, if I'm a struggling artist and the kind of work that I do, the stuff that people give likes to, they're reinforcing my desire to make more of that thing,
Yeah.
whatever that is. If it's a good thing, I'll say as an artist, "Oh, that feels really good to get praised for drawing this. I'll draw another one." And if they want to discourage it, like on Reddit, you can just downvote something. But anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm agreeing with you. That's all.
It's true though, and I don't think everybody understands the mechanisms that simply because we don't see very many examples of it. But it is interesting when you bring up Reddit and downvoting that the social media world is kind of a really specific version of that. Like people like, love, react, whatever, retweet, whatever it is, and that gives you like the positive reinforcement, or they like report you and ban you. That gives you the negative
And that
reinforcement.
just really that makes me personally want to dig in and do it even more.
Me
because
too.
now I'm mad at them now. It's like, "Oh, I'm going to show you. You tried to stop me from drawing comics. I'm going to draw something even more hardcore." So if they really wanted to, for instance, Reddit could have just been friendly to someone like me because I actually am a moderate. So they could have been like, hey, George, could you maybe mellow it out? We still like your stuff. Please draw more, but we just want you to mellow out. I'd be like, "Okay, cool. I'll keep drawing comics. Let's all be friends." But instead, they live in the times where they're just so afraid of the other side, whatever that other side is.
Yeah.
They point it at me and go, "He's on the other side." I'm like, "I am? No, I'm not."
Oh.
And so now their other side loves my stuff. And I think I'm still a moderate. So
Yeah. I would say so.
whatever. I just want to make comics to make people chuckle, and I want to draw because I enjoy drawing.
Well, you said something interesting on Twitter today about how you can judge any ideology by how it treats outsiders. And I was like, that's a really good point, and that's what you're describing right now. Like, okay, if I am even as a moderate, somehow an outsider to you, how are you going to treat me? If you're going to treat me by silencing me, ignoring my existence, and kicking me out, like, maybe your ideology is not so great. Maybe it's not so virtuous.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a fundamental Christian background, that sort of thing. And then we also were given situations where like, oh, don't be friends with that kid. He watches MTV or something. And I knew that that was a very nice kid and good family, all that stuff. They just didn't have the same background as I did.
Yeah.
And that only kind of put me in a position where it's like, oh, I can't be friends with that kid, but I want to be. And it created confusion and boundaries. And I guess the end result is I had less friends than I could have. But in terms of ideology and society wise, I think people could meet in the middle if they were willing to mellow out. But considering the times we live in right now, it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
You can't calm down a crowd. It's a snowball effect, I think. They get more and more mad. They want to keep reinforcing what they're mad about until the bad thing goes away. Yeah. And unfortunately, the very thing they're doing to make the bad thing go away is ensuring that it keeps sticking around.
Well, and especially if you're treating it like, it's just so weird to me. You know, I was much more on the left, I would say, a few years ago, and I was still teaching, and all these people would be like, oh my God, I can't even understand how anybody would ever like Trump. It's insane, and they must be idiots and fundamentalists. And I was like, well, that's a weird thing to assume, that everybody who supports something is crazy, you know, and that you somehow are not, and that they are. And I was like, and a lot of my students were Trump supporters, so I just asked them, why? Why do you like him? What is going on? Like, I want to understand. And then they told me, and I was like, that's very rational. Their reasons were all very rational. They were very thoughtful and very rational. And these were not bad people. And I was like, well, how do you not see that whoever it is you're saying is on the other side is just a person, and they probably arrived at where they're at for very rational, or at least somewhat thoughtful, you know, emotionally sound reasons, no matter how you judge it from your point of view, you know, and that the only way you can like connect past that is to ask them and interact with them. You can't just vilify them all and get rid of them.
Yeah, that really is, I think, the sign that something has gone wrong. Take a relationship, a romantic relationship, for example. If the partners are able to talk through their problems, that's a sign of a healthy relationship. But if they're at a point where they're not talking anymore, but there are still problems and there are fences being put up, that relationship is doomed.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of time. So if someone is willing to talk to the other side, in air quotes, whatever that is, somebody might find that the other side are just normal people who want to, you know, have families and maybe change society for what they perceive as the better. Fine, we can see eye to eye on certain things. Maybe we disagree on how to get there. But there are people pulling the crowd to their extreme, their own extremes on both sides. Or at least both. There's maybe multiple sides. They're all trying to pull people into their circle. Whereas meeting in the middle, that's what politics is supposed to be about, talking to people on the other side, not standing on as far away from the fence as possible. At least that's what I would have assumed politics was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Some people who have the charisma and the personal, whatever it is, to be able to talk to people on the other side. But I guess voters don't like people like that. They want to vote for whoever will make them feel safe.
Yeah, and pander to their whatever narrow interests are, you know.
Yeah, it's I think about it and I get scared. You know, people just want the easy solution and they don't want to have to reach across the line and talk to scary people.
It reminds me of a Black Mirror episode where it's like a soldier and he's you know, hunting out what seems to be aliens. They're like bug-like creatures, or they're crazy or whatever, and killing them, and then at some point you realize that he has like a chip or an implant, and it's actually what's been making him see certain people as aliens, and they're actually just people, but he's been killing them because he's been perceiving them this way. And I feel like that's like this hijack of our mind, you know, and we're just seeing each other in these very, very convoluted, like exacerbated, unrealistic lights, so that we're able to dehumanize each other and ignore each other. Or harm
well, that's
each
what
other.
enables. I agree. If someone wants to make the other side go away, it's easier to dehumanize them, because then you don't feel so bad about it.
Yeah.
When you attack a person, let's say a person with a family, and you know, spray paint their house, throw bricks or something like that. actually be like, yeah, good, they deserved it. It's like, are you out of your mind? That is so over the line. But they can say that that is okay because they were an outsider. They were not one of us. They're not actually human, probably. They're the beneath us. And we've seen many atrocities where the recipient of that wrath is considered not human, not one of us.
Yeah.
It's one of the signs, actually, that can concern somebody if you're being dehumanized. It's almost like they're priming you for an attack so that they don't feel bad when you get attacked.
That's why I worry about all this mask, non-mask stuff, because I just read something the other day where someone was like, I want to find an anti-masker and beat them to death. And I was like, well, first of all, how would you know that they're an anti-masker and not just someone who is medically incapable of wearing a mask or anything obstructing their face at all? Because that exists, you know. So you're just gonna find someone and kill them, and that you feel good about that? Like, this is absurd. Even if you think they're somewhat dangerous, just murdering.
I think the impulse to murder in that case is something like, I see a bug in the house,
Yeah.
and I can't sleep. I can't sleep knowing that bug is there. Of it somehow.
Yeah.
And is so scared of the bug that they're willing to kill, apparently. But that is so beyond rationality. Like, I think if they were of a right mind, no one would dare to say that.
Right? That's why I'm like, we need to get this person actual help. I mean, you're not well at this point. No, and I can imagine someone saying it because they think it's funny or edgy. So who knows what's actually going on with that person. But just like that, even promoting that sentiment seems pretty unhinged to me. I don't know. Yeah, I say things in anger sometimes and fear sometimes too, and that I'm sure sound horrible. But like, I don't know. It just seemed a bit far. I was like, hi, well, I hope we don't start seeing pogroms against people not wearing masks or whatever. Or vice versa.
I don't know. It's a lot of people feel free to say things online that they would never say to other people face to face. So far, it's like you can't. I mean, I believe in free speech. You shouldn't be arrested for that sort of thing. But saying I want to kill X and Y person is darn close to danger, like a call to action sort of thing. I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah. But, at the very least, it's morally reprehensible. If everyone practiced extinguishing and just didn't respond to that tweet, then maybe it'd be okay and just go away.
I'm sorry, go on.
No, you go ahead.
No, it's okay. I think I don't want to keep talking about negative things or anything, but if we could talk about whatever you like, it's fine.
Well, I did want to ask, and it's a bit of a change of gears, but, I know that there's a lot of people out there who are artists who don't feel like they've been recognized yet or don't feel successful yet, or they're just kind of struggling. And I know that even just creating in itself can be a struggle sometimes. You're like, I don't feel like in the mood to produce anything, but I'm supposed to, and that sort of stuff. And there also might be like younger people who are listening and just wondering like if this is something that they might want to pursue or whatever. And I just wonder what you'd want to say to people who are just starting or are somewhere, in the midst of their artistic career, but just are feeling like they're kind of at a loss or struggling with it. Do you have any advice or anything that you'd want to say to them?
I guess what I would tell my younger self, because let's say I'm in my mid-30s right now, but my freelancing career didn't really explode until this year, or 2020, I should say. I was able to find work in comics. That has been my primary job for a long time. My first book was published in 2006, like Japanese comics, that sort of thing. And thanks. But even then, like, the business was not in a place where it was able to sustain itself. So I was never able to really do this full time. And then in my late 20s, I was able to become a freelancer in the indie game development scene, doing animation, stuff like that. But I was only just scraping by ever years. So I don't know if anyone could look at my career and say, I want that, because I don't recommend taking the path I took at all, because it sucked. It really did. But the only thing that kept me going is I just have this. I mean, I've had odd jobs and normal jobs. My longest job was that I worked at a print shop for like 5 years. But that was my main job, and I drew comics on the side, hoping that I could do comics full time someday. And it was only because of this past few years where I guess I started drawing a certain type of comic, and that resonated. I didn't plan it. I just drew what I always drew. I would find some time during the day to draw a strip that I think is funny. I find whatever is the most popular, and then I do more of that. So I guess that's the pattern if anyone wants to take this path, but I don't really recommend it. But yeah, I think at the core of it is to have something that you love doing, that you almost need to do. Because even if I had my normal 9-to-5 job again, I would still be drawing all the time. So it's just something I need to do. It should be something, yeah, that's what it should be. Something that you need to do. That's what art is, I guess. It's just a piece of you. It's how you express yourself. And if you're blessed enough to be able to do it for a living, I guess go for it. But I have no idea how to do that. It fell into my lap, and it could evaporate again tomorrow, honestly. So I have no idea how to do this for a living. It seems to be working now. I don't know how to keep it working. So I'd love to know the answer as much as anyone else.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you just summarized what people go through and what it's like very, very well. And again, living with an artist, I see the same sorts of things, and I always feel like, man, it's pretty cool that anybody can do what they love and get paid for it, right? Like, no matter what that is, that's like a huge blessing. And so I feel very blessed to be able to do, this and other things that I love and get some monetary reward for that. That's really cool for me. And I like what you said, like, if this is something that you feel like you like need to do, like you truly love doing this, then you're just going to do it anyway, right? And if you manage to find yourself in a position where you're getting something back for that, like that is really, really cool. And it's not necessarily always going to happen. And yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say luck too is a factor. I don't like admitting that, but I know a lot of webcomic artists who have amazing, godlike comics who barely have, enough readers to justify keeping going, but they do it anyway. I don't know what the percentage of success versus try or unsuccess is. It must be somewhere in the realm of like percent success rate. But the more you roll the dice, the higher your chances of it coming up favorable. True. So if you find something that works and your audience is now responding to, keep rolling that dice, and maybe you'll increase your chances. And things like finding vacuums in the industry. And being one of the only people who can fill that vacuum, that increases your chances also. But it really is a roll of the dice, and I guess it's being able to increase your odds, perhaps. That's part of the formula, I guess.
Do you find that part of your kind of struggles that you've been through here and there on the path have like led to more art or better art? Because I also hear that it's like, you both want to be rewarded and supported in what you're doing and get monetary value for what you're doing. But at the same time, if it gets too easy, you might not have any material anymore, right? Do you find there's like a balance between that struggle and production?
That's a great question. I don't know.
It comes from the artist in my life, not me.
Yeah.
I'm just lucky.
Yeah, it's a tough one. They say it's like with working out, I guess. If I want to build muscle, let's say, not that I'm especially like fit or anything, but I have to use weights that challenge me. And if I'm lifting weights that don't challenge me, I guess I won't gain muscle. Maybe that's the lesson. So one always wants to be, at least you want to have a little bit of friction, at least.
Yeah.
You always want to try to be toughening up and doing more and more. So let's say I'm making comics that, let's take Charles Schulz, for example, if you're familiar with Snoopy and all that.
Yeah.
His work didn't especially evolve over the years. So I would imagine he didn't challenge himself artistically very much. I don't think he minded. And obviously he made billions of dollars. So that's fine for him. Someone in my position where I always want to try to be learning new art tricks. I'm always trying to learn a new medium, let's say. So a few years ago, I tried to teach myself 3D and 3D animation, that stuff like that. And that actually helped make my comics painting go faster because I learned a lot of tricks through 3D that makes me paint abnormally fast. So
Wow.
a lot of people say, how can you draw strips so fast? It's because I learned tricks from a completely different medium.
Wow.
So apparently I can draw comics really fast, and not a lot of people can do this or are willing to do it. So because I was able to do something else and learn some other trick, I was able to assimilate it into what I do on a daily basis. So even if an artist is stale, I would say throw yourself into a position where you are very uncomfortable, because then your survival circuit will kick in. I think actually this is the answer to your question. I'm sorry it took so long to find it.
No, I love it.
If you throw yourself into a survival situation, your body will, I don't know what happens in your brain, but it's like, I have to do things that make me really uncomfortable. Something new. I think the biggest enemy of growth is comfort. That's the answer.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you landed on that, because I hear that from so many completely different mindsets, completely different political spheres, completely different habits, like all sorts of different people I interview. We end up at this same point that comfort is actually its own kind of like trap and will degrade you over time. And it's the, like you said, the being uncomfortable, pushing yourself outside and, you know, doing new things that's going to help you grow. And it's kind of like this cliche thing we hear over and over again, like you got to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. But it's also like, no, you literally cannot get too comfortable. It's bad for you, right? Like you said, your brain, your body, whatever it is, are going to respond to these things in ways that are going to open up all kinds of things. And I love also that you connected it to the you know, that all these other things you're learning kind of come together to inform whatever you're doing next. And it's like this idea that no matter where you've been and kind of what you've been through, it's all kind of led to this gestalt of what you are now. And it's all working, you know, it's all coming out in each piece you have, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're always trying to, I mean, no human is a complete thing, a complete sculpture, whatever. I think actually I have a little theory in my family. I've seen a couple of people have like, not exactly Alzheimer's, maybe, just a sort of like degeneration. What's the word?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Their minds kind of go. I think what happens is that they just get bored and they don't do anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I have older people in my life that have been super, super active and they're over 90 and they're sharp, real sharp. So I think I don't want to ever put myself in a position where I'm not pushing it.
Yeah.
Not in like a crazy military way, but I always want to be always painting, always writing. I want to try to do something to challenge myself. I never want to be stagnant.
Very well said. Never be stagnant. That's another theme that I've been hitting on lately in my life in general, is that stagnation, you know, is the opposite of life. Life is literally like energy flowing. And whatever way you try to use that or look at that, it's always the same, you know, that this flow is the thing that's keeping things healthy. The rivers are the same, you know, like we see it everywhere. And I was thinking about how we're obsessed with safety lately in our society. And, you know, when you think about a safe, that you would like put your money in or whatever. I mean, the whole point of the safe is to completely stop all movement. It's safe, but nothing is happening. It's safe because nothing can get in and out of it and it cannot move, or it is literally stagnant. And it just made me realize like safety is stagnancy. And I'm not saying you should go out and like jump off cliffs or not be safe. I'm just saying like this obsession with safety is going to push us into death, really. It's its own kind of death, you know? There has to be
Ironically,
a better
also,
balance.
if you stay in place for too long, even if you put all your money into a safe, because of the way that the economy works, your money will lose value as it sits there due to inflation anyway.
So you're literally just harming yourself.
Really, yeah. Sitting still in some ways is really, really dangerous. If that applies to going outside and getting sun and all that stuff, I mean, I'm all for that too.
Yeah.
I mean, just obviously being careful, not being, you know, daredevilish, like you said, with, you know, jumping off a bridge or something. But
Right.
I would say risk has the potential for, you know, for instance, if I drew a strip that I thought was very spicy and people would be mad at me, if I was scared of people mocking me or being mean to me, I would never draw it, because I don't want people to be mean to me. It doesn't feel good. But at the same time, I wouldn't have gotten all the people reading my stuff now if I kept being scared of that one reaction.
Yeah.
So it still doesn't feel good to be called names. I hate it. But I mean, no risk, no reward. If I don't put myself out there in the same way, like my job isn't dangerous necessarily, but like if I was a construction worker, I'm working with tools that could kill me. I'm doing all kinds of things that are dangerous, but that's what a job is sometimes. You have to do things that make you uncomfortable because that's where, unfortunately, the reward is as well.
It's absolutely
And that's scary.
true. Yeah, and it is scary, but it's another callback to face our fears, right? That it's going to be scary, and it's like moving forward doesn't make the fear go away. It just makes you realize that you're bigger than the fear. You can do it, even though it's scary.
Yeah, there's a good quote of if someone's scared of something, like they have a phobia, you can't make the thing less scary. You can just make the person more brave.
Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah.
Okay, another random gear change. If you could invent one thing to help transform society, or like instantly change one thing to help society run more smoothly, what might you do? There are no restrictions. This could even be like magical.
Invent something to make society better.
Or if you could like, snap your fingers and something is just automatically changed everywhere all at once.
Oh, there's so many things wrong.
Yeah, which one?
Yeah, no. The machine that does all of these things. Geez, what's one of the biggest problems we have? At least in America, the biggest problem is probably fear right now.
Yeah.
We're just overwhelmed. Everyone's afraid, and they're making so many mistakes because of that one thing.
Yes.
I guess, gosh, I don't know what the solution to that would be.
Yeah, because you can't like remove the fear because we need it for some things.
Yeah, and it's foolish to not be afraid of certain things, but to be afraid, I guess whatever they're afraid of losing, then make people feel safe that they won't lose it and they can take risks, but then you're not afraid of it. Yeah, I guess that's my answer. Whatever removes the fear or lessens it.
Lessens it. Yeah, maybe it's like a thing you can like put on your forehead and like suck out some of the fear, but not all of it. So you still have a safe amount of fear. It's a healthy amount of fear, but you're not like being driven by it to make these very silly mistakes.
No, or just bottle it, really. I mean, in a way, the comics for me are like a little therapeutic thing. I draw things that I'm very scared of.
Totally.
Because then when I look at them, I'm like, oh, it's not so scary. Or it's like, I don't need to be scared of it anymore because now it's outside of my head and I don't need to worry about it or think about it anymore. When things sit and fester in our heads, I think they have a snowball effect. Like they say, if a person has recurring dreams, nightmares, it's because the brain is trying to resolve it, but they can't. They can't find the way out of it. It's like a maze.
Yeah.
So I think what happens is when people are afraid of something and they can't articulate it properly, they can't get it out of themselves, then it exponentially grows because they're not able to solve it, and they wake up the next morning and the problem's still there. So like, for instance, I don't mean to bring up presidential stuff, but for instance, people are afraid of Trump a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't think they necessarily need to be, but if they wake up every morning and he's still president, I think for those people, it's just going to get worse and worse because their worst fears, whether rational or not, whether based in reality or not, they're living in their scariest possible scenario. And they're only talking to people who are also scared.
Yeah.
They're not talking to the rational people that are like, it's fine. It's actually okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry. It's fine. Even if, I don't know, I think, I don't mean to keep repeating it. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
But yeah, fear is the problem. That's the problem.
Yeah. No, it's really a good point. And it's a really good point, too, about how, again, theme of the episode, like stretching outside our comfort zones is part of the answer and the solution to keeping ourselves moving forward rationally, because if people would reach out to the people who aren't having the same fear response as them, then they'd get a little bit of perspective. And I like, what you said about this art that you're doing being a sort of mini therapy for you, I mean, I think that's also why people respond to it so well. Like we touched on earlier, is that it's therapy for them too. You know, you're like healing the mass mind in some way by healing yourself with that expression.
I mean, I did a recent one with the dancing nurses
I
thing.
love that. Yes.
Yeah, and it was odd because as I was drawing it, all right, so on one hand, I chuckled at it when I thought of it initially. I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if the dancing nurses, blah blah. And then as I'm drawing it, I was thinking about family members who I've seen in that situation. And as I was drawing, for instance, the old man in bed,
Yeah.
I was like, this reminds me of something from my past, and I was very, very sad as I was painting it. And then, of course, there's the joke in panel 4, very tonally different. But as I was drawing it, there was a sort of like catharsis. I'm like, this is a very sad memory for me. And then a little at the end, but like it's inappropriate, but also it's okay to laugh. And I guess the dancing nurses thing, for instance, it's extremely horrifying and sad. And somehow we get a laugh at it.
Yeah.
I somehow think it's like, I've mentioned this before a couple times. I think whatever the pressure release valve is in the human brain, it's in that scariest place that people don't want to go. And so when someone like me is willing to draw that, makes it real for other people, and they say, hey, if someone could go and do that in their own head, I can do that too, and laugh at the thing I'm scared of. And then they have just a little bit of pressure release. And I think maybe that's the value. I don't know.
Yeah. Very well said. And I think exactly when you're describing your own emotions that you're going through while you're doing this, you know, you're kind of infusing it in that, going through that process yourself and mirroring it back for everyone else to see. And it's exactly like you described. It's, I think, part of the beautiful magic of art that you can't really get many other ways.
Yeah.
Well,
so.
What are your plans and projects for the future, or things that are upcoming? Do you have any projects that you want to share, or things that you're headed towards that you want people to know about?
I mean, I could tell you guys. It's nothing huge. I'm currently just drawing my silly comic strips as often as I can find time. So that's on Twitter, mostly Patreon, that sort of thing. And in the meantime, I have actual comic books that I'm drawing. But that used to be my full-time job, and now it's becoming my part-time job. So I have 2 series. One is called Mary Sue. The other is called Bad Dreams. And I'm working on those as often as I can. And I guess that's my plan for 2021 right now. Just drawing more strips and finishing my books. And I have no idea where I'm going to be at the end of the year. So yeah. I only really have a plan for the next few months, and I have no idea where I'm going to end up.
That's all you need. You got a pretty powerful trajectory to carry you through it too. So it looks like it's going to be fun for all of us.
It frightens me, but I think if it continues the way it's going, it should be all right.
I love it. I love how candid you've been with us and how much you've shared with us. I think seeing, you know, sort of the vulnerability and pitfalls as well as the successes is what all of us need to remember, that we all go through those things and that we're all sort of in those same processes, and it's very healing for people. But I definitely know that there's going to be a ton of people who are listening to this and watching this that are going to want to support you and just own some of your work and just find more of you. So do you want to share all of your or the ways that you'd most like people to go do that, those things, connect with you and support you? And I'm definitely going to list them all in the show notes below, but just so people can hear it if they're listening to this in their cars or whatever they're doing.
Oh, sure. Yeah, if anyone uses Twitter or Instagram, my handle is gprime85. And yeah, I have a Patreon listed in the bios of both profiles. And if anyone wants to buy one of my books, I have a small Etsy shop, which is also linked in my Twitter. It's called Studio NJ, if anyone's curious. And yeah, you could buy books. I think Patreon's probably the best way right now because it frees my hands so that I don't have to ship books. but books are nice too. So I appreciate anyone who wants to support my stuff, no matter what, no matter how.
Yeah. It's cool. It's cool that you have so many different ways and options too for people to interact, because I know that's part of everybody wants a different thing, you know? So it's the more you can kind of make that available, the better it is for all of us. And was there anything that you wanted to sort of touch on or talk about before we start to close things down?
Nothing in particular. I'm just grateful, especially for anyone who might disagree with me on any issues at all. If they're willing to listen to me, then I think that's a step in very much in the right direction. For example, a lot of people want to try to vilify me or say I'm like a bad person or this or that. But honestly, if they disagree with me and they hear this and they find out like I'm just a normal person who, you know, I'm just a normal person.
Yeah.
So nice to meet you.
Yes.
Whoever you are. I hope we can, if we can't agree on things, at least we can respect each other. I'm okay with just leaving each other alone if we can't even do that. But yeah, I think that's my closing thought, I suppose, is I don't want people to actually think that I'm a bad person or anything. I'm just a normal dude.
Yeah. I mean, and I hope it would be so beautiful and magical if the people who thought that about you did come and listen to this or something like it so they could remember, oh yeah, most people are just normal people. You know, like no one's out, not many people I should say are out trying to be like destructive or horrible or hurtful or whatever they are imagining that you might be doing, which is a bit absurd. So I'd be very grateful if that was part of the, you know, outcome of us talking like this.
I hope so. I think more normal discourse like this is the better way to humanize each other instead of seeing footage of like, I don't know, people rioting or something like that. If they saw pictures of, if all they see of me is the worst of me, then of course they'll think the worst.
Yeah.
So things, just normal conversations like this where you can actually see a person's heart opened up. It's like, oh no, they are not different from me.
Yeah. Well, and
yeah.
I always like to remind people too, like you and I didn't really talk before this. I mean, we had a few messages back and forth and that was it. So we didn't even know how much we agree or disagree on, but I think both are rational people and you know, we would never just attack each other for no reason. And if we found something during this conversation that we were at a complete opposite on, I don't think either of us would have really cared. And, you know, maybe that's a good model, hopefully, for people to sort of think about as well, that you don't need to know and love every single aspect of a human in order to treat them well and have productive and fun conversations with them.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, being able to talk to any stranger is an acquired skill that unfortunately we lose the more we don't interact. You know, it's a practice thing. You have to practice it.
Good point.
Just talking to a stranger on the street like we are. Again, we don't know each other, but we're very polite. You're a very polite person. I enjoy talking to you. And I guess if you only hear about a person through third hand, second hand, you're able to fill in the gaps with your own imagination. And if you want that person to be a boogeyman, I guess you can mold them into one in your imagination. And that's a dangerous vacuum to be stuck in. And it's like the safe. You got to open up the safe, maybe go meet that person, not even to be friends with them, but just to sort of make that boogeyman go away so you can feel like he's not after you all the time. That's not a safe place to be in your own head.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And it's a really good reminder for all of us to go actually maybe looking closer at our boogeymen and see what they're actually made of, because most of them are probably going to just dissolve.
Yeah. Or draw a silly picture of them.
Yeah. It's like the Harry Potter, when you were describing that, it reminded me of Harry Potter. I don't remember what the spell is, but they like have a spell that makes their most horrible fear turn into something hilarious. And I'm like, that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, ridiculous if I remember. Yes. But that was, I used to read Harry Potter. I won't go into that rabbit hole.
Well, it's very true. And it's a really good metaphor for, you know, what maybe all of us could do and what you are doing for yourself and for everybody that I think a lot of us are very grateful for.
Yeah.
So I always like to ask people, no pressure, but just, you know, what are your final sort of words of wisdom or ideas that you want to wrap things up with or leave people with as we close down?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. You know what? Tomorrow is possibly the day that the electoral college votes are counted and stuff.
Yeah, it's a big day.
I would wish, if I had a magic wish, everyone would just accept the results, whatever they are. I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I just want this to be over. So I hope we can all go back to normal as soon as possible. Pre-COVID, whatever, pre-freaking out about the world ending. I would like us for all we have to do is not freak out. So let's hopefully go back to that. Whatever happens tomorrow.
I love that vision. I love that hope. I'm with you in that hope, and let's let it be true, guys. It's like you said, if everybody's doing it, that's what's going to happen. We're all going to just not freak out.
I've waved my magic wand. That's my wish.
I love it.
May
That was the thing. Well, fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing, and this has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom, according to the perspective slanger, George Alexopolous. George, thank you so much for being here and for being you and for all that you do.
Thank you for the invite, Lindsay.
Yes, thank you for coming. And maybe we can do it again sometime. And I didn't say it to you before, but I do my little closing monologue now. So if you want to stick around for that, you can. And if you want to sign off, you can. And either way, we wish you well and thank you for being here.
Well, sure. I'm going to actually get back to work. I have some books to ship, but I do want to thank you for your time. This has been really fun. And I do hope we talk again sometime. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, what is inside of us is sometimes messy, confused, or so nebulous that we cannot even connect with it or describe it. If we are lucky, we have a shamanic transmutation expert that we colloquially call artist in order to help us out of that pickle. The artist observes constantly, understands implicitly, and translates the unutterable and indescribable into magical representations that can unlock and transform our entire psyches and societies. We are blessed to have these magicians among us, and we have most likely taken most of them for granted. Perhaps we can remedy that ill by finding our nearest artist, reminding them of how amazing they are, and supporting them and their work. Our souls, and indeed the entire collective of humanity, will be better off for it. And until you honor all the subtle magic and brilliant wisdom swirling around you in your world, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
Mind is elusive, time is exclusive, round trip all inclusive, the island is abusive, Jekyll's wearing hides in plain sight lines, heckle devils blind by strange slight lines, slight designed as their own resource, if they control the narrative there's no recourse, prophecies diseased by a strong overreach, time ain't a seat that sits idly by while breach, watching bodies wither as they slither like a sailed river on a land of which they don't own a sliver, fatal error and avoidance, symbiosis, lack of focus, to understand balance from the rover to the lotus, from light to the dopest, gifted through osmosis, luminance went out a while ago, they didn't notice, masturbating currency, squatting in the dark chamber, disconnected from Akasha, watching dissipate the vapors.
You still don't get it, do you, boys? There ain't no countries anymore, no more good guys, they're running the whole show, they own everything, the whole goddamn planet, they can do whatever they want. What's wrong with having it good for a change? And they're gonna let us have it good if we just help them. They're gonna leave us alone, let us make some money. You can have a little taste of that good life too. I know you want it. Hell, everybody does.
Do it to your own kind.
What's the threat? We all sell out every day. Might as well be on the winning team.